Firefighters in France, Portugal, Spain, and Greece are battling forest blazes that have ravaged thousands of hectares of land and killed several people. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom is braced for record high temperatures, perhaps peaking at 41 degrees centigrade tomorrow. Our chief correspondent, John Cookson, has this report.
The summer heatwave that's triggered devastating forest fires across southwest Europe shows no signs of abating today. In Spain, 20 wildfires are raging out of control from the south to Galicia in the far northwest, where blazes have destroyed around 4,500 hectares of land. Fire season has hit parts of Europe earlier than usual this year, after an unusually dry, hot spring that left the soil parched. Scientists blame climate change and predict more frequent and intense episodes of extreme weather. And perhaps more scenes like these, with a Spanish hydroplane approaching a beach packed with tourists in the southern town of Fuengirola. It dips its bow into the sea to collect water to dump on fires in the hills. In France, firefighters are battling wildfires as the country wilts under unusually extreme heat waves. 2 huge blazes, which have consumed pine forests for 6 days in the southwest, have forced the evacuation of more than 16,000 people. Meanwhile, the 12th Petersburg Climate Change Conference is underway in Berlin, highlighting the importance of staying focused on climate issues which have left Europe tinderbox dry.
Häuser innerhalb der nächsten 10 Jahre weggespielt wird.
German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock said, "The climate change doesn't stop at any border. That's why the answers must not stop at any border." Meanwhile, the fires across Europe rage on at the start of what looks like a long, hot summer. John Cookson, Arise News.
Well, John Cookson joins us now from London. John, thanks so much for joining us on Newsday. Is the temperature still rising in the United Kingdom?
Hi guys, yeah, it certainly is. It's currently 34 degrees centigrade, excuse me. The heat's getting to my voice. 34 degrees centigrade, 22% humidity. And I think that's part of the problem. That's why it feels so hot. Now, I know by Nigerian standards, these temperatures are not massive. But for the UK, it's huge. It's hot. And the country is suffering as a result. Schools have closed. Some train lines shutting down because there's a danger of the tracks buckling in the heat. And there's a red warning from the meteorological office, the first time it's ever been issued since the system started. So we are looking for higher temperatures today. As I say, it's 34 at the moment, looking for perhaps 38. But tomorrow is going to be the real scorcher, according to the weather forecasters, reaching the hottest ever recorded since records began, of 41 degrees centigrade here in the UK. Half the country enjoying the heat and heading down to the beach, of course, but that carries its own perils. People jumping into the sea, not appreciating some of the currents perhaps, or jumping into cold rivers, not appreciating how dangerous that can be. And for sure, sadly, there are going to be some deaths recorded in the next couple of days, I'm sure. But that's where we're at the moment. The temperature hot and rising.
All right, hot and rising, you say, but what's the picture across the rest of Europe?
As I said in my report, fires are blazing all the way from Greece through the Central Europe, through France, Spain, Portugal, and temperatures high in Aquitaine in France, 42 degrees centigrade yesterday. 20 major fires currently blazing in Spain. Portugal recorded 41 degrees centigrade. So it's a very similar picture. And as I said in my report, look, Europe has heat waves every summer. Of course it does. We all remember that. But the difference this time is that the spring has been very, very dry. So the ground is not wet. And, you have these vast acreages of grassland. There's tinderbox dry. And suddenly you get a cigarette end, or even sun shining through a bottle to create a fire, and suddenly you've got an inferno. So firefighters across Europe are very busy at the moment.
And scientists are attributing high temperatures to climate change. We know this. But does that mean that it's here to stay?
It looks like it. I mean, all the surveys that have been done show that since the industrial age in the 18th century, the Earth's temperature has increased by 1.1 degrees centigrade, and we're seeing the effects of that now. The hot weather is changing grasslands into desert, and I should point out that I'm a great follower of what happens in the Middle East. I lived there for quite a while, and things are much worse there. For example, in Iraq, where rivers and vast marshlands are drying up and turning into dust bowls, and no one quite sure what has to be done, and where's the money coming from to tackle this problem. It really is an increasing difficulty seen in this part of the 21st century.
John, a climate change conference gets underway in Berlin today. What are we likely to hear?
Yeah, it's already underway. Started a couple of hours ago. It's a conference that's held in Germany every year. Ironically, Germany, one of the biggest consumers of fossil fuels like gas and oil, and locked, of course, into this market with Russia, and we're hot now, but later this year it's going to be cold in Germany. No one's quite sure how the Germany is going to fare in all of this in terms of the consumer, and prices rising all the time. So there's big issues to talk about. So the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, is there, and he said already today that half of humanity is in the danger zone, he said, from floods, droughts, extreme storms and wildfire. And he says, and yet we continue to feed our fossil fuel addiction, and that's absolutely right. We see the results of climate change, and yet we keep on consuming fossil fuels in huge quantities. So inevitably, it's going to be another talking shop in Berlin, I'm afraid, ahead of a bigger conference later this year, COP27. In Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, but they'll do a lot of talking. I'm just wondering how much action they'll bring in Germany.
Well, John, as you said earlier, you said a red extreme heat warning is in place in the United Kingdom for the first time. So what sort of precautions are people expected to take, to minimize the risk to life?
Number one is don't travel unless you really have to, and certainly the trains, if they're running, and the underground railway is a very uncomfortable place to be today. Secondly, look after your family, look after vulnerable people like old folk or children, and thirdly, just take general care. Take plenty of water with you if you have to go out, and stay hydrated. So these are some of the main recommendations from the Meteorological Office. And that red warning already out at the moment, the first time ever issued in the UK.
John Cookson, I want to say many thanks to you for joining us here on Newsday.